Okay, so Judge, we just wrapped up for the day. It was a pretty full day. Big takeaways?
Well, big takeaways are that Amber Geiger is going to testify, which is not really a surprise, but if it's a case that's going to be about what she was thinking at the time of the shooting, she's going to be her own best witness. So that'll be obviously a climax. Some of the laying out the roadmap of the two opening statements. Now we kind of know where they're going, what they're shooting for, and what kind of evidence we can expect, which is going to be expert testimonies. We just heard from Rivera. His testimony was a little lackluster. I think that it sounded like it was going to probably be bigger in the opening statements than it was, but and I think one of the ways that it wasn't so effective is just that it didn't really talk about so much about what she was doing on that day of. But other big takeaways, so, is it going to be, just looking down the road, the medical examiner testimony, was Mr. Jean, was he getting up from a seated position? Was he advancing towards Ms. Geiger? That's going to be a critical piece of evidence, because that may help decide what the jury charge is going to look at the end of the
whether or not
case
we
in
end
chief.
up seeing manslaughter, criminal
That's right.
negligent homicide, or some of these other
That's
lesser
right.
offenses. Let's kind of walk back through the prosecutors.
Okay.
What spent a lot of time on how she spent her day, and kind of tried to make the point that she spent a lot of it sitting around waiting while detectives interviewed these suspects. And then they also made a big deal about this relationship with her partner and that she was texting him. But what I thought was interesting, walk our viewers back through this whole thing that they went through about how she walked up and she parks in this open air garage and doesn't seem to notice anything.
Right. So it's from the state's point of view, they were really trying to set the stage for her way of thinking, both from that she had many opportunities to notice and ought to have known, should have known where she was, and the prosecutor went through great lengths to describe all the things that should have triggered her to say, I'm not in where I should be. They introduced a bunch of procedures, which I think is laying the groundwork for them to argue this is the way a reasonable officer should have behaved. And then
slow it down, call for backup,
correct,
take cover, that kind of
correct. And then, of course, the relationship, I think, in part is to lay the groundwork that that's what was on her mind, and shouldn't have been.
Well, of course, some of the big things that they pointed out was that obviously the garage was open air. She walked down 2 hallways, past 16 apartments, the lighted number with the apartment. Also, that if she was on the right floor, she would have seen her neighbor's planter, and that his apartment smelled like marijuana, and he had a red mat. And then they went through a number of other things. But we're about to, actually, Rebecca Lopez is on the line, and let me get my IFB back in so I can hear Rebecca. But obviously she's been down at the courthouse and has some different thoughts on what she's been seeing. And hold on a second. So real quick before we go to Rebecca, let's talk a little bit about the defense. What was their main thing?
So the defense was to take it the other direction and just kind of break it down to say, hey, it wasn't just one day. That's not the reason why she was tired, her actions on one day. It was the culmination of a whole week. It was the culmination of not sleeping well because she was anticipating her work day. They wanted to say, well, hey, it's an everyday kind of thing to not notice where you're at, especially after a long day, and to downplay the relationship. And so they both laid out, especially what happened after she opened the door, and that will later be critical to determining the self-defense and exactly how that's going to play out in this trial.
And they also pointed out that it was common among residents in that apartment to park on the wrong floor, go to the wrong door, and even put the key in the door.
That's right.
So
yeah.
that seems to have been a common problem. Okay,
Yeah.
So let's go to Rebecca. Rebecca?
Hey, yeah, one of the things I found striking about all of this is when Rivera was on the stand, and they asked him, were those messages deleted? Why were the messages not on your phone? But they didn't come back and ask him, do you know what the nature of those messages were? And maybe the judge can talk a little bit about that, but it seems like he would have obviously known what those messages said shortly after the shooting and what they were texting about, but none of that was, admitted, or they didn't question him more intensely on that, which I thought was kind of surprising. What do you guys think?
What'd you make of what they were trying to do with him on the stand? I mean,
They were what now?
What'd you make of what their purpose was behind putting him on the stand?
Well, I think that obviously they were trying to establish, well, at least the prosecutors, that there had been, this relationship, and that she was distracted, and that's one of the reasons why she didn't know where she was, and was too focused on him, and so she was careless. But then, he then got up there and said they hadn't had a relationship in months. So, I mean, that's why I believe that they put him on the stand. But again, I was surprised that there was not more questioning as to specifically about the deleted emails or text messages between the two of them. I thought that maybe the defense attorneys missed an opportunity there. Now, he is subject to recall, but I feel like they should have honed in a little bit more on, what did you delete? I mean, you know what you deleted. Obviously, you deleted some messages off your phone. And I would have wanted a little bit more information about the context of those emails, text messages.
What did you heard his sister's testimony. What did you think about her?
Yeah, she was emotional. I interviewed her a couple of days prior, and I thought that, obviously it's very difficult for this family. He was a pillar in the community. He was loved by his family. His sister talked to him every day. And she said, she went cold when she heard that he had been shot and killed, and that she still wants to call him every single day. And I thought that her testimony was very important to, show the human aspect of, sometimes people get lost in the victim, the name, but who they are as a human being, as a person. So I thought her testimony was really important. And one thing that I did want to note real quickly also is that just before the judge let the jury go, obviously the jury is going to be sequestered, she told prosecutors to admonish Judge Creuzot, the DA, John Creuzot, for doing an interview. She's still very upset about the fact that he spoke publicly in an interview yesterday with a local TV station. And it was interesting because I'd actually asked him for an interview a couple of days before that, and his PR people had said, oh, no, he's not talking, and then he did the interview. So she was very upset. You can tell she is not happy with the DA and his conduct in this case.
Well, my understanding, and I obviously, is that the reporter came to interview him about something else and then asked questions about Amber Geiger. But the reality is, it shouldn't have come as a shock that a reporter is going to hit you up about the biggest trial to happen in Dallas County in decades. What did you make of it? Well, Rebecca, stay on the line. Let's talk a little bit about the sequestration. I mean, this is... Recall any time this has happened like this?
No, I cannot recall, especially in the case in chief part of the trial, where a jury's been sequestered. And if it's anticipating going into a second week, that's going to be a long time, and especially without any gadgets, no phones, tablets, smartwatches, what have you. These folks are going to be feeling very disconnected.
Well, Rebecca and I would have to see therapists if they tried that with us. That would be a very difficult thing to try to do. Rebecca, have they given us any indication of who we might see on the stand tomorrow, what we can expect?
No, they haven't, but I'm expecting expert witnesses. I'm standing here right now in the hallway, and I'm watching Botham Jean's family's attorneys, Lee Merritt, Crump, and Daryl Washington giving an interview. I suspect that they're going to speak for the family, saying that the family cannot properly grieve. They've said this in numerous interviews, that they cannot properly grieve Botham's death until this is over. The family's had a very tough time having to sit in the courtroom and relive all of this. Now, when I spoke with Botham Jean's father and mother a couple of days, or I guess it was Thursday, one of the things that the dad said was, I don't even know that I want to hear everything. There's probably details that I don't want to know. And I suspect that they did prepare them because they did meet with the DA prior to this, but they probably were not aware of all the nitty-gritty details. And so I can imagine that some of the testimony today was very difficult for the family to listen to.
Well, as a parent, anything like this will be hard. I mean, you just don't. I'm sure every minute of and every day of this is going to be very difficult for his parents and for the rest of his family. Rebecca, is the judge giving us an indication of what time we're going to start back up tomorrow?
We're starting at 8:15 tomorrow, and they're going to immediately resume testimony. This judge is trying to get this the most out of every day, since this jury is sequestered and has to be in a hotel, and so they're going to, she wants to move this trial along quickly. Although we are expecting that it's going to last at least 2 weeks, but she's going to start early and keep it moving.
Okay, well, cool. Thank you so much, Rebecca. We appreciate you calling in.
Okay, all right, bye.
Just a few other things before we end for the day. There were a few other interesting things in the opening statements. The door strike plate, we found out that it was not working properly and it bowed out, and so the door would come to a close but not latch. So we kind of now have the explanation for why she's able to get in. Right,
and and along with that, as you mentioned, just that all the residents that had accidentally gone to other doors. So all that will be, it may seem very technical and dry, but it's going to be very important because it's all going towards was her behavior reasonable or not.
It feels like we're going to hear that word just over and over and over again. So we're going to wrap it up for today. I want to let you guys know we'll be back tomorrow. You can watch our complete coverage on our new WFAA app. It's available now in your app store. We're also live on YouTube, WFAA.com, Facebook, Twitter. And if you'd like to hear that complete 911 call, you can find it on our YouTube page, or you can go to WFAA.com, Botham Shem Jean. Thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you, Judge, for being on with us.
I appreciate the opportunity.